I take refuge in Buddha. I take refuge in Dharma. I take refuge in Sangha. I wanted to talk tonight about a story about an old-time Zen teacher in China named Pai Chang. His Chinese name is Pai Chang, and in Japanese it's turned into Hyakujo. And he was kind of an amazing guy. He's maybe like 2 or 3 generations after the 6th ancestor right now. But he was the first guy to really institutionalize a set of code of conduct for Zen monasteries in China. And it was a big change. It was a big change when Zen moved from India to China to begin with. But there was another change there. And he was also famous for even when every day, even though he was the abbot of the monastery, every day he was up in the field working with his mat, planting, doing whatever. And when he became so old that people were worried about his health going out working in the field, they thought, what are we going to do? He just won't listen to us. So they hid his tools. They hid his mattock and they hid his shovel and they hid it away. And so he didn't say anything. He just stopped eating. And a day went by, 2 days went by, 3 days went by, 4 days went by. And finally they came and they returned his tools. They said, a day without work is a day without eating. A day without work is a day without eating. It's something that bears reflecting. And he, there's a lovely story about him. He trained with a teacher named Basil, who was, I think, 2 generations after Wei Nong. And Basil was like a Guy Casey size, He was this massive kind of guy. He said his tongue hung down to his chin when he talked. And just this huge rock of a guy. And one day, Hyakujo was out walking with, before he became the great Hyakujo, he was out walking with Basil. And Basil bent over to tie his sandals. And these wild ducks flew by. If you've ever been somewhere and you see wild ducks start, it's just like, it's so amazing with the experience of it. And they flew by, and Basil looked up and he said, wow. And what is it? What was it? And he said, wild ducks, master. And Basil said, well, where are they now? And always a dangerous question. And Hyakujo said, flown away, master. Flown away. And Basil just grabbed him by the nose and just gave it a twist. And he said, you still say flown away. You still say flown away. So, the story, there's 2 sides to the Dharma. We chant the identity of relative and absolute, and it's not good to explain the Dharma too much, but it's also okay to give people a direction to sail by, to navigate by. So the easiest way, or then going back to the time of the translation of the Diamond Sutra, the best metaphor I've ever seen is if you go down to Ambleside and you stand, on the dog park on Ambleside after there's been a big blow, and the waves are coming in. These huge waves are coming in, and each one is completely unique. It has a shape and a size and a direction, and each one it has its own lifespan. And it comes crashing up on the shore, and it's spent, it's gone, and its wave energy informs the next wave that's coming in, and so on. And so each one of those waves has its own individuality in a very real sense. It's a dharma, what we call a dharma. But at the same time, all of those waves are nothing other than salt water. They're nothing other than the play of salt water in the moment. So each one of those waves, duck, flown away, duck, flown away, duck, flown away. There's nothing but salt water. There's nothing goes, there's nothing to go. It's not like it was here and then it's not here. It's just the salt water doing what salt water does. So the story I wanted to talk about, it's interesting, a really interesting story. It's one of these ones that it's kind of like a bedtime story. It's maybe a little bit of a myth, but it's in our tradition. It's handed down as truth. And so in Hyakujo, in those days, still in some places, a Zen teacher takes his name from the mountain. Traditionally, they set up shop on a mountain somewhere, and he takes a name from the mountain that he teaches on. So I'd be called From. I'm not particularly attracted to that name, so thank you very much. But that's the name of the mountain that Doi and I live on. And so Hyakujo Pai Chan uh, was every day over this extended period of time. He was giving teisho after teisho after teisho, and every day there was this old man. This old man, he's standing kind of at the back of the room, this gray old guy, and kind of a little bit wispy maybe, and finally, and he was never there at meals. He was never there at zazen. He'd come for teisho. And so one day, Hyakujo went up and he confronted him. And he said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm not a person." He said, "Millennia ago, I was the abbot of this monastery. I was Hyakujo on Hyakujo Mountain. And a monk came to me and asked me a question. He said, is it an enlightened person, does an enlightened person fall into causation at all? Is an enlightened person subject to cause and effect?" It's kind of what Buddhism is all about, and Theravada Buddhism, it's like the whole thing is to get off the wheel, so how can I escape from the wheel of suffering, the wheel of samsara, turning around, turning around, turning around. And the whole idea is that you realize yourself, the fire of the passions is cooled, and eventually there's nothing left, and the ashes are just swept away, and that's the end of it. Shunryu Suzuki talks about zazen being beyond karma. It's beyond karma. It's before karma. It's a karma-free zone, I guess, in a way. But so Hyakujo, old Hyakujo, most of Hyakujo was asked this question by a monk, and he said, was asked, "Does an enlightened person fall into causation or not?" And he says, "No, they don't." And the old man said, because of this answer, because of the flaw, the faultiness of my answer, I've had to live out life as a fox for 500 lifetimes. So you think, well, so foxes are kind of nice, but in China, in Japan, you say somebody has a wily fox spirit, it's just like an incredible insult. Like they're seen as evil, demonic creatures in some respects, and great mighty Haku, one of his publications was licking up wild fox slaughter. And so the old man says to modern day Hyakujo, he says, "Please say some turning words and release me from this fox body." So I don't know if you've ever experienced turning words. I certainly have a number of times, particularly with Hogan, sometimes with Chosen, where he would say something that I'd heard him say probably 50 different times when I was training down at 35. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, just my state of mind, just this fullness at the time, where it would, in Samadhi, he would spin something, like just that word, return something, and it would open something up. And so he says, "Please say some turning words and release me from the fox body." And he says, "Well, ask me a question." And the old man says, "Does an enlightened man fall into cause and effect or not? Does he fall into causation? Does he fall into karma or not?" And Hyakujo says he does not ignore causation. Now, is there a great difference between he doesn't fall into causation and he doesn't ignore causation? It's an interesting story to reflect on that. And it has as its root kind of a misunderstanding that is quite similar to my, or it's an aspect of my metaphor of the waves in the ocean. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So the Buddha himself, he said, I forget which sutra it's in, he said, I only teach two things. I teach suffering and I teach an end to suffering. And it gets gussied up along the way in terms of what's going on. There's all this fancy stuff, and sometimes we forget about that. And when we talk about suffering, there's this suffering like sickness, old age, death. Um, when you come up against it, your practice becomes very genuine very quickly. Very genuine very quickly. People who are looking at some very frightening illness where they could die. Um, I had somebody in the Senator for a number of years, very strong practitioner, and her husband uh, had died. Her former husband had died, and she manifested uh, this extreme pain in her abdomen, so much so that she went in and she had surgery, had exploratory surgery because they couldn't identify. There was nothing wrong. There was nothing. It was just the power of the mind to do that. So, sickness, old age, death, and then loss. If you love something, if you care deeply about something, you are inevitably setting yourself up for pain and suffering. You're inevitably, because to love something deeply, you have to know, as good citizens and students, that it's going to be taken away from you. At some point in time, it's going to, let's say you love somebody dearly. They're going to fall out of love with you. You're going to fall out of love with them. They're going to die. You're going to die. Something's going to happen. That's something you're necessarily going to be separated from them. And you either have the ability to turn on a dime, to pivot, to be able to let go of that, to accept that, and to hold this relationship lightly in your hands like you would a flower landing on your hand, or it's going to be ripped away from you instead of letting go. It's going to be painfully ripped away from you. So when I talk about samsara, traditionally in the old Theravada teachings, they talked about, it was a cycle of birth and death, this round and round, this wheel, cycle of birth and death. But for me, I think, I see it as a cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. This Buddha had this great analogy of a dog chained to a stake. It just goes round and round the stake over and over again. We go this cycle of desire. Oh, how great! Oh my God! Finally, here's this shiny one, and you grab at it, and then you find out it's got, it's like a fish biting at a hook, and it's got a hook in it, and you tears your lip, and you end up on the sushi platter. Or it's like something that's just, I got to work so hard. Look at that beautiful pink cashmere sweater, and then you get it, and after a couple of weeks, it's just the sweater, and then but it comes in blue, and we just go round and round, hoping that it's like going round and round on a merry-go-round, the old ones where they had the gold ring, and you could if you got the gold ring, you got a prize. You reach for the prize. Maybe this time I'll get it. Maybe this time. But as long as the paradox is that as long as you are living your life in that way, as long as you're living for the pursuit of happiness, living now for then, trying to get to happiness, trying to get your ducks lined up in a row so that everything's where you want it, you're necessarily going to be unhappy. Because you are defining this present moment as being defective in some way. It's not enough. There has to be something more. It's, it may be, well, this is a very nice margarita, but there's no salt around the edge of the glass. So, whatever it might be. So then the Buddha said, you can test my teachings if you really want to know, is this one of my teachings or not? There's a website, did the Buddha really say this? Chosen just loves that. She's always quizzing people on, did the Buddha really say this? Or she used to anyway. But he said there's 4 Dharma seals, like a custom seal or an excise seal that gets put on something to see whether it's real goods or not. And he says the first is it a teaching about suffering and the truth of suffering? And he said, secondly, does it speak to impermanence? Does it speak to not the fact that things are changing, but that there are no things, and all there is change itself? And then third, and very significantly, does it speak to the question of non-self? Does it speak to the fact that there are no things that exist on their own side of things? That things do not exist on their own side of things. It's not like it exists somewhere apart from this right now. It's just this. It's just this. And you say, well, Wait a minute, Hogan, what about your house? Doesn't it exist right now? There's just this. There's just this. There's just this. There's just this. And if I went back to my house, sure enough, there's just this. And then finally, there's this teaching of nirvana, that there's an end, that there is enlightenment, that delusion can be struck away, and that ultimately it's a state that is beyond suffering. So, in a very simple way, you can ask yourself, well, what is suffering? And when I was um, uh, practicing, I went through a number of stages. One time, the definition I came up with was struggling with something that's of the nature, not of the nature to be changed, not of the nature to be resolved. The Buddha said it's this mental quality that we add on to, it's this emotional mental quality that we add on to pain. Pain in your knees is a wonderful gift because you can't get away from it. And you see the mind in its full technicolor detail, bargaining, trying to, can I do this? Can I do that? Oh, please, maybe if I do this, I'll just try to hold it's just like, how can I get away from this pain? How can I get away from this pain? And it's not the pain itself, it's this mental quality, mental emotional quality. But ultimately, I think what suffering is, it's the inability to rest in the natural quality of the mind, in the natural function of the mind, which is awareness. Because you can't stick a pin in awareness. You can't stick a knife in awareness. You can't shoot a bullet into awareness. Awareness is aware. It's not a thing. Wisdom isn't a thing. Wisdom isn't like, you can't write it down on a piece of paper and put it in a letter and mail it off to my sister in Red Deer, Alberta. You just can't. It isn't that. It's here right now. It's here right now. It's here right now. It's here right now. And the great Lin Chi said, it's each one of you. There's a person of no rank, a true person of no rank, looking out through your eyes, hearing with your ears, tasting with your tongue. That there's some little mini me up here, which is the sense we kind of have, right? If you're really honest, even if you've been practicing for a while, it's hard to get away from this little mini me up in this bony little room up here that's, kind of got its hands on the control and looking out through, to drive this meat wagon down my side. But in the Nirvana Sutra, one of the early Mahayana sutras, I can't remember if it is the Buddha who's speaking at the time. He says, all things are impermanent. This is the law of appearing and disappearing. Appearing and disappearing are the nature of reality. When appearing and disappearing disappear, then the stillness is bliss. Everything is the nature of impermanence. Everything is of the nature of change. And when that change stops, when appearing and disappearing stop, then the stillness is bliss. So this bliss is the backside of cause and effect. This bliss is the salt water matrix, if you want. It's this it is this formless field from which everything arises, which is you. Which is, if you think that there's anything here that is not your mind, you're a million miles away. If you think, that's when I see that things don't exist on their own side of things. There is nothing here that exists apart from your very own mind. Everything here is conditioned. Everything here is fundamentally conditioned. And one of the fundamental conditions for its existence, for its manifestation right here, right now, is your mind. It's not even that. It has no, absolutely zero existence apart from. You think that there's anything here that you either say it's all of it's you or none of it's you. It doesn't much matter how you look at it. It's the same thing. So I kind of ran up against this one time. I was working in the kitchen down at Great Bow. And I'm, well, I will tell you, I'm not the most athletic or graceful of individuals. I'm rarely asked to dance. Sometimes, Heinrich and Linda will turn to me, come along, to ecstatic dancing, but they don't know what they're talking about, I have to say. It's like a little bit like a camel on skates or something. But I was working in the kitchen and I wasn't paying attention to this was the second time I tore down an altar and destroyed an altar at the monastery. The second time. The first time was during work practice and I had a parka on, and I went over to pick up something that had fallen on the floor, and I came up and the hood of my parka caught this altar in the work area and tore the whole thing down, smashed everything. But this time was even better because it was somebody had picked up this Buddha on pilgrimage, and it was this very special Buddha to them, one of the cooks. And again, I knocked it with my head. These places aren't made for normal sized people; they're made for hobbit people. And and I knocked it down. It fell down on the floor, and it just broke to pieces. And so, what to do? I bowed, went and got a broom, swept it up, threw it in the garbage can. And then there was this guy at the time. His name was KT, which Kotetsu was his Dharma name, and he was looking. He didn't talk very much, but he looked and he kind of looked at me and looked at the garbage can. And then the next day, he came back and he'd taken all the pieces out of the garbage can and put it back together with modeling clay. And so it was this really beautiful thing. But Chosen turned this into a poem for me in terms of like seeing this. That's just the nature of things. Everything is of the nature of impermanence. There's a poem that talks about Joshu's four Buddhas. There's a clay Buddha can't get through water. A wooden Buddha can't get through a fire. A brass Buddha can't get through a furnace. If you think you can lean into something and it's going to be of the nature of impermanent, that there's something you can grab onto somewhere that's going to be a rock that is going to hold in the face of this wind, this golden wind that is blowing here right now. Good luck on that. But the true Buddha intimately rests within. It's like I often talk about an innkeeper. In an inn, there's many guests that come and go. Many guests that come and go. Some come and they stay for a night. Some come and stay for 2 weeks. Some come and stay for a year. But everything passes through. Everything passes through. There's an old saying that whatever comes in the front door of the inn, let's say, whatever comes in the front door is not the family treasure. It's not the family treasure. The innkeeper rests with it. The innkeeper rests with it. So this is talking about the bliss of this backside of cause and effect. So realizing that which is not of the nature of change, behind, you can say, it's kind of a stinky way of saying that, but that which is not of the nature to die, yet which takes birth and dies, as and when it will, not of the nature to suffer, and yet experiences all suffering. If everything was wiped out in some, mega, all the stars supernovaed at the same instant and blazed off in one cutting mighty blaze of energy, leaving nothing but vast space. It's even a silly way to talk about it, but something would appear. Something would appear. So appearing and disappearing. This stillness is bliss. So a lot of this suffering that we're dealing with is trying to sort out my story. Now, I don't know about if you're aware of that. There's this story of Hogan, now in 70 chapters. Poor Hogan, and about how his life was. And Slav and I were having fun the other night talking about, we grew up, we didn't hardly have meals. Oh, you had meals every once in a while. We never had meals. It's just like a Deadpool and a Wolverine kind of going back and forth kind of with that. But, we have this story about how I was hurt and how I was broken and how I'm carrying this painful story along through life. And we have the sense that somehow I've got to fix it. It's like this tangled skein of wool, and I've got to get untangled somehow and get it all neatly spooled up, and then I can start to live my real life. But the truth of the matter is, you just take a knife and you cut the skein loose. You don't even have to cut the skein loose. There is nothing wrong. There is, and it's an amazement when you realize that there is nothing wrong. Say, no, my knees are sore. Yes, your knees are sore. And there's nothing wrong with sore knees. It's exactly the way things need to be right now. Just to experience it. You know, this whole moment by moment by moment by moment, this arises. It's not like it's continuing on. There's all these bits and pieces and they're drifting around. It's flashing into existence, flashing into existence. Moment by moment, this gift arises. And you all you have to do is play with it. It's literally it's arising just to how can you express it? How can you what action can you take to engage it? How can you make it flower in some way? What is being asked of you? Is there something that you need to do with it? Sometimes sweeping up me. But this we have this cycling around this life story that we think we have to sort it all around. And it's a little bit like ghosts lingering around someplace. You know, there was a year or so ago, there was a bunch of us watched a film by great Gyantse, Dzongzar Gyantse Rinpoche, and it's called Pig at the Crossroads, and it was about a guy who had died, and it was his take on somebody who was having, they're transversing the Bardo, you know, the first steps of transversing the Bardo, and he was, the what I wanted to talk about was he encountered all of these people who were stuck. Like there's this one guy who was an imperial emperor from several hundred years ago or something, and he was still like he was so worried that he had this very important message that had to be delivered, and whatever it pertained to, it wasn't relevant anymore. The main character who died, he had to get back because he had done this horrible thing. He was cheating on his wife with one of her friends or something like that, and he had to make this right. But he was dead. There was no, but the ghosts linger around, and we linger around. We turn ourselves into ghosts, lingering around these old stories of the past that don't exist anywhere other than in our own mind. So this suffering. There's a Persian poet, Hafez, and he said, "What do sad people have in common? It seems they built a shrine to the past, and they often go there and do a strange wail and worship. They built a shrine to the past, and they often go there and do a strange wail and worship. And what's the beginning of happiness? To stop being so religious like that." So it's happiness, which is always here and now. There is no safe place other than here and now. There is no happiness other than here and now. It's not that I'm going to get happy. It's here. It's the bliss of this present moment, seen for what it is. Your waking knees, cup of tea, smell of mown grass. So saying that in Zen, that you live with your wealth and you live with your poverty. You have to live with your wealth and you have to live with your poverty. This is it. This is it. Each one of us are circumstances, and how can we make these circumstances flower in whatever way? Not trying to necessarily try to fix things or try to get somewhere else. Doesn't mean to live like a greedy pig. And it certainly doesn't mean to attach to cause and effect. It's interesting, you get, there's like two sides of the coin. Water in the waves. There's two sides of the coin. On the one hand, everything is cause and effect. Everything, this mood, call it mood, call it it, call it whatever you want, call it this, it holds itself to a certain set of rules, can we say. It holds itself to the rules of karma, cause and effect, in terms of how things play themselves out. But it also has no rules. There is no cause and effect. It's all just this flashing into existence. And if you hold to cause and effect and say, "I'm going to be a good little boy. I'm going to go to law school, and I'm going to work really, really hard, and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to get to happen. And I'm going to work and work and work and work and work and drive myself and drive myself and drive myself until I can get that." And then one day you're walking down the street and a brick falls on your head and kills you. That's one side. And the other side is you say, "Oh, well, I saw that guy. We saw what happened to him. This is just a complete waste of time. Anything can happen. You got no control over this. So the whole thing is on a certain level, like blowing smoke. It's random. And what's the point of it? So he goes out and he just spends his life getting high and getting drunk and consorting with prostitutes, and then he gets venereal disease and he gets a substance abuse issue, and finally he's in prison and he dies in jail. How do I get away from samsara? How do you get away from samsara? How do you escape samsara? That very question is the essence of samsara. That very question is the essence of samsara. How can I get away from this? How can I make my sore knees stop? They hurt so bad, they hurt so bad. How can I make it stop? How can I get away from it? How can I get rid of my 99 problems? Buddha said you can't get rid of the 99 problems, you can get rid of the 100 problems. Wishing you had no problems. Cycling around and around. So coming back to my story, there's this old man, and his answer was a classic answer. If they're riding with us, of course, that's what enlightenment is. You're going to be free of will. You're going to be free of cause and effect. If I get enlightened, I'll be free of karma. Nothing can touch me. I'll live free as a cloud, unattached to anything, and like an angel, like just this pure essence of awareness. That there's no self. There's no self. And that's also true. That's also true. So you can sit in full open awareness. You want to be God, if you want to train hard enough and you just practice with samadhi, you can see very easily open to just my mind is completely boundless. There's nowhere it doesn't extend. It extends everywhere throughout the whole universe. And you say, oh, wonderful. I've been mind God. That is samsara with a longer string. It's still samsara because it's the self. It's me. I am it. It's just a longer string. So if you are a fox, live the life of a fox wholeheartedly. Live with your poverty. Live with your wealth. Live with your sore knees. Live with whatever it is wholeheartedly. Not trying to fix it, not trying to get away from it in some way. It's this living free of karma is like it's like a bent idea of non-attachment. So people think I'm going to talk a little bit about Zorba the Greek, which is a novel I read a zillion years ago when I was a teenager, but it's so marvelous. The main character in it is this kind of city guy, and he's kind of a sad sack guy in some ways, but he's a Buddhist, and he's just detached from everything. He sees himself as practicing very deeply, and he's just detached. There's nothing that can touch him. How sad. How incredibly sad. And this guy Zorba, he's this wild Greek, and he just takes life, he just bites it off in huge chunks, and it's not that it's just what he is, he's engaged, and he doesn't really particularly care whether he's successful or he's not successful or whatever. It's just, this enterprise that he's engaged in at any particular time. So this practice of non-attachment isn't clinging and not pushing away. It's whatever arises, I choose this. I choose this. Not trying to get away from this in some way, saying, I choose this very experience. Sore knees, I'm not going to struggle with this. I'm not going to go around the circle anymore. I'm going to sit with these sore knees. I'm going to sit in this present moment. So, there's a bad man. There's a really bad man, who won't name names, but doesn't fall into hell. And a saintly man doesn't go to hell. This very place is it. And this very place, this very time, exists everywhere. Exists throughout the whole universe. And there is no place that is not this place, that is not this time. There's no hell to fall into, no heaven to ascend to, other than right here and right now. And it's only our thinking, storytelling minds that create this heaven and hell. It's all salt water. It's all waves of salt water. Each one subject to cause and effect at the same time, just to play this one ocean. This is the great Shibayama Roshi, a guy who I heard Norman Fisher talk once. Norman heard some of his talks on the Mumonkan, and he was apparently just overwhelmingly great. But Shibayama says the fact of cause and effect is so clear and undeniable. In all ages and places, we can read nothing on this earth that doesn't exist through the action of cause and effect. Every moment, every existence is causation itself. Without it, there is neither I nor the world. And this being the case, the man of real freedom, the woman of real freedom, the person of real freedom would be the one who lives in peace in whatever circumstances cause and effect bring about. Whatever the situation be favorable, whether the situation be favorable or adverse, she lives it as the absolute situation with her whole being. That is, she is causation itself. She never discriminates dualistically different aspects of the situation. Her heart is never disturbed by outside elements. When she lives like this, she's the master of cause and effect, and everything is blessed as it is. The eternal peace is established right here and now. This is the indescribable spiritual happiness of the Zen person. Those who know it don't talk about it, and those who talk about it are far from it. So, what's the problem with my person sitting in open awareness? I mean, it's a wonderful meditation practice, quite frankly. It's shikantaza. You just go to zero and sit in open awareness. And I'm not joking. That's really and truly, you for me, the way, first you have to learn to concentrate the mind. You have to learn to concentrate the mind. In the old Japanese monasteries, they didn't do that, but we're kind of fucked by what's happened. We just become. Harada Roshi once said it takes 10 years. It now takes 10 years for somebody to do what they used to do in two, as a Zen student in terms of concentrating. So you got to learn to concentrate the mind. And then for me, it's helpful to take up a koan, one of the breakthrough koans, just to actually work through that until you get some taste of boundless mind. You get some taste of boundless mind. You get some taste of the salt water, and then just sit shikantaza. And what shikantaza is this open attention, open awareness. Mind drifts away, bring the mind back. Not trying to make anything happen, not trying to figure anything out, not dragging the past, not leaning into the future, not following the rumination about the present, giving rise to a mind that dwells nowhere. And then relax. Relax it. So what's wrong with it is that the center hasn't been dissolved. When you're working with listening to sound, there's this sense of stretching. And as I said, the mind becomes very spacious and open as it, you talk about samadhi where there's this sense of there's me here and there's what I'm listening to here, what I'm paying attention to. There's this gap. Like there's two gaps. There's this gap in the concentration. I'm sitting here now. I'm thinking about some pornographic magazine I read when I was 12 years old, and now I'm bringing myself back, and then I'm whatever it is. But there's me here paying attention. There's what I'm paying attention to, and there's this gap that I fall. But the real gap is this me here and what I'm paying attention to. And samadhi is when it becomes that. When there's just. And there's this samadhi on the pushing, and then there's this samadhi realization. So just sweeping the floor, just writing a talk, just figuring out how a switch works on a computer, or some of us were worried, figuring out how to get an e-transfer deposit. But it's a function of just on the cushion, just off the cushion. So here's and the problem is we're attached by a string. I really want to finish this. So if you bear with me, it's the last thing I'm going to get to. It's this string is what I really want to talk about. So there's a sense that we have that with the boss, this guy I was talking about, the Zorba's boss, he's detached from everything, and he sees it as freedom. He says pure awareness, not subject to karma or suffering. And this is what Zorba says to him. He says, no. He says, no, boss, you're not free. The string you're tied to, just like a dog to the stake, is perhaps no longer than other people. That's all. You're on a long piece of string, boss. You come and go, and you think you're free, but you never cut the string. And when people don't cut that string, I'll cut it someday, I said defiantly, because Zorba's words had touched an open wound in me and hurt. And Zorba interrupted. He said, it's difficult, boss. It's very difficult. You need a touch of folly to do that. Folly, do you see what I mean? You have to risk everything. But you've got such a strong head, boss, it'll always get the better of you. Man's head's like a grocer, keeps accounts. I paid so much, I've earned so much, that means a profit of this much or a loss of that much. Head's a careful little shopkeeper. It never risks all it has. Always keeps something in reserve. Never breaks a string. No. It hangs on tight to it. Bastard. The string slips out of its grip. The head, the poor devil's lost. Finished. But if you don't break the string, what flavor is left in life? The flavor of weak chamomile tea. This string he's talking about is, we've been talking about this over the last weeks. It's like, you train and you train and you practice in the Zendo. You sit and you practice Zazen, but you're taking it out into your life. It's like you've got the good ship Dharma, all provisioned. It's got the sails, it's got crew on everything, and it's ready to go. You're going to sail around the world on it, and it's going to, but you raise the sails and everything's ready to go, but it won't go anywhere because you're still tied to it. So what is that stream that holds you to the ball? It's control. What's this role? We have this sense of doing business with life. There's me trying to work my way through life, trying to get things lined up the way I want them to be lined up, the way I think they need to be, trying to get ahead, trying to do good, trying to do right, trying to win, trying to be well thought of. And it's this quality of living now for them and trying to get something out of it, trying to get my ducks lined up in a row, trying to get it to line up with my wishes and desires, trying to control them. Trying to control things, trying to control my zazen, trying to control my soul needs. That's the center. That's the center that needs to be dissolved. In alchemy, the old alchemists, they used to talk about an alkahest. If you're all in, not reading a book that's an alkahest, it dissolves anything. It'll dissolve anything, and you can't even. I mean, it's kind of a ludicrous idea. If it dissolves anything, how would you capture it? You put it in a glass retort, and it dissolves a glass retort, and it falls down the floor and burns a hole all the way through to China. I mean, it's a little bit crazy. But I was suggesting a couple of weeks ago that maybe that's money. But it's how do you dissolve this control? You have to see it. You have to see it, and you have to be willing to let go. You have to absorb yourself so completely in whatever you're doing, either on the cushion or off the cushion, that you disappear. You truly, and not trying to get something out of it for yourself. I'm practicing Zazen because I want peace of mind. I'm practicing Zazen because I want to be the world's greatest Kendo master, and I want this kind of control. I'm practicing Zazen because I've got a heart condition. It's practicing the Dharma for the sake of the Dharma. Practicing just for this. Just for this. That's dissolving the center. And we stop trying to control things. There's this song by Leonard Cohen. He says, "You who must give up everything you cannot control. You give up everything you can't control. It begins with your family and eventually comes around to your soul." With this fear of losing control. And so we take, instead of living this life as an expression of the Dharma, not for me, but for this. How can I make this, which is what I am, how can, in the fullness of my own being, how can I make this come alive? We try to control. We take refuge in the story. We take refuge in the map, in our understanding of what's happening. So what I'm encouraging you to do is, when there's a Tibetan training, it says to be a child of illusion. To be a child of illusion. So when you come off the cushion, to be a child of illusion Dogen Zenji talks about it in the Genjo Koan. So he says there's like three aspects of practice, he talks about. But the final one is essentially he said, this is a dream. This life has a fundamentally dreamlike character. It's not a matter of holding yourself removed from it. It's not a matter of trying to rise above it and be detached from something. Being detached from something is to throw yourself into it completely, not holding back, not holding yourself above in some way. Holding yourself above is emphasizing the center and the control. Dissolving completely into it, just throwing yourself into it. And so it's dreamlike, but without caring about that. What our job is to throw ourselves into that, to throw ourselves into this dreamlike character, not for ourselves, not without any self-ambition, but giving rise to a mind that dwells nowhere, just like children think.